Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Patient Ratings conversion strategies that we hope will help you sail through summer. If we can get this thing to move, that'll be an interesting little. Before we get started, if you have to leave for any reason, we will be recording the webinar and sending a link for follow-up. We will have a Q&A session, and you may send questions during the webinar in the control panel. I'm Marie Olison, and I'm the founder of Real Patient Ratings, and I'm also actively managing La Jolla Cosmetic Surgery Center, which is a for-physician plastic surgery practice with a laser and skincare center. So I think that puts me in a particular position to understand the challenges that we all face and to understand the marketing and sales challenges as well. And my co-presenter is Eva Shea. And Eva, if you will introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Eva. I'm the online strategist currently for Real Patient Ratings. I have done SEO and internet marketing for tiny little practices and big ones all over the country. And this Real Patient Ratings is my third national directory review site towards helping practices across the country. I've taught at ASAPS and ASPS, and I spent some time at realself.com way back when it was brand new. And I think it's important to know that both Marie and I consider ourselves to be problem solvers, and we're driven by helping both practices and patients have great experiences through the use of data. So we're excited to share with you what we've learned.
And where we are today with Real Patient Ratings is that patients have answered almost 2.4 million questions through our surveys, which they've answered about almost 43,000 surveys, both for consult and post-op. We have published over 27,000 reviews, and the average rating for the physicians using Real Patient Ratings is 4.69 or 93.8, 94%. So our physicians are receiving an A from their patients in the world of verified reviews. And we're going to look first how to increase conversions on your website, and I'm going to talk to you about taking advantage of reviews as the new form of advertising. And I honestly believe that reviews is the most important sales and marketing strategy since the advent of the internet. And I do not say that comment lightly at all. And we have on the call today both members and non-members, and I'm going to go over this again for everyone because I think the content is so important. And I want to make sure everyone really understands and is using review content to your ultimate best advantage. So Trend Watching in 2009 predicted that reviewing is the new advertising, and that I'm using that title today. So we're going to look at where reviews are found, and if you think, most people think of reviews as being on the greater web, and when we look at our greater web strategy, we're looking at reputation management, how little we can control those negative reviews on the third-party websites where we're dealing with trolls, we're dealing with reviews by non-patients, by former employees. I have an ex-wife on, not my ex-wife obviously, but our practice has an ex-wife giving a review. We face competitor reviews all the time on Yelp in our practice. And so all of this brings down our scores. Nonetheless, we have to have a strategy for reviews on the greater web. But many people are speaking on this topic with great wisdom, and that is not what we're talking about today. So what we're talking about is your own website and the consumer desire for review content, how that is a part of their decision-making process, and how your own website needs to provide review content, or that you force the consumer who must check off review content as a part of their buying process to go elsewhere where they're going to find less accurate information about your practice and possibly get distracted and go off to choose a different provider. So this is perhaps a useful way to look at it. Right now, the majority of review content is on the greater web, with your website being confined to patient stories, thank you cards, and quotes from patients without any third-party verification. We help you put verified reviews onto your site to balance that the strength of your site against the greater web, and this is in rankings and in search, as well as content for the patient visiting your site. And then adding more recently badges for ratings, because we have learned that while reviews persuade, ratings convert. So let's go back and look at what's happening when your would-be patient begins to search for you. And this is both a search for an individual physician's name or for your practice name. And if you have a fictitious name like we do in our practice, it's very important that you know the percent of your searches that are coming for your practice name. And that you have a review strategy for the practice name as well. For me, over 30% of my searches are coming from my practice name, so I have to have a review search strategy for the practice name as well. In each case, you're going to see here after the name that is being searched, Google is going to automatically suggest that the searcher search for reviews as well. And this is occurring because there are so many review searches that they're just automatically reminding the person who's searching, don't forget to look for reviews. So this means we can't forget to provide reviews. Now, this is looking at a review search for our practice name. And in each of the yellow arrows, this is either coming from our own site, our own strategy, meaning our relationship with the real patient ratings, or our own SEO providers. And there's only one listing here, which is from the greater web. And to me, this is I consider to be the real home page of a search for our practice's name, and we are controlling it through our understanding of a review search and by the practice name. And it's much easier to do for practice name than for an individual physician's name, but to me this is the ideal of what we want to see. What we know about the addition of reviews in traditional retail is that there's an uplift in sales when reviews are combined with products. And so in this case, this is eConsultancy reporting an 18% increase in product sales once reviews were added to a number of retail websites. And these are borne out in multiple studies with varying increases, but this is one of the lower increases seen. So when we saw this data, we went to a group of our member sites, and we went to would give us access to their Google Analytics, and we went to the pages that contained review and other user-generated content like thank you cards and patient stories, and they had to have a contact card on that page. And we said, okay, what is the percent increase, if any, of forms being filled out from these pages with this content, review content related to the other pages on the site. And so what we found was that there was a 2 to 8 times increase in forms completed from the review content pages on the site. So this is a parallel to what the e-consultancy was showing, that consumers who are looking at products want to see reviews associated with those products while they're on the site for those products. And so I took my own LJCSC.com data, and I was able to, because I know the Google Analytics, I know the completion of forms per page, I know the conversion rate from a contact form to a surgery, and I obviously know our average case. So I'm able to tell you that in 2013, on the non-review pages of our site, the revenue per contact form was $1,037. But because of the higher conversion rates on the review pages, the revenue per contact form was $1,647, or 63% higher than the other pages on the site. Now, we were on that 2 to 8 times number. We were at the lowest end of the uptake seen across that study. And so that would say that if you're not taking advantage of the review content and getting it well found on your site, and then you have a potential increase in contact forms by rethinking how you're using the review content on your site, rethinking the navigation of your site, and rethinking making sure you have a contact form wherever review content is used. Now I'm going to go back and make one other point, because there's a lot of fear of using reviews in general, and I want to just speak briefly about the difference between an environment of verified reviews versus what's typical around the web. And this was our practice in 2011. On Yelp, we were a C+ based on 19 reviews, and the distribution of those reviews were that 33% were 3s, 2s, or 1s, neutral, dissatisfied, or highly dissatisfied. In the first group of reviews from Real Patient Ratings, we surveyed back 1 year, and the first group of reviews, we came in 22% higher at 4.75, and the distribution of those 3s, 2s, and 1s represented only 3% of our patients. And I'll show you in across hundreds of practices that is a distribution that is now very common. 4% is what we see now. So where La Jolla Cosmetic Surgery Center is today is we're still a 4.0 on Yelp. We're still barraged by competitor reviews being the most common negative, and that we have a great deal of difficulty getting Yelp to acknowledge and remove. We have 4.6 on Google with 17 reviews. I think the main issue there continues to be the unwillingness of consumers to go public, as they must do with Google. And then on Real Patient Ratings, we're a 4.73 with 650 reviews at this point. And then this is looking at 28,000 reviews, and not all of these have been authorized for publishing, but on Real Patient Ratings, and you can see our average reviews 4.69 here, and this is comparing us to RateMD and a study in which the average rating on RateMD was 3.93. This is across 386,000 reviews on RateMD from 2005 to 2010. And again, the problem being you're going to be a C+ if you don't have the ability to remove the trolls, the non-patients, from your review system. Now, there's so much discussion in reputation management of the negative reviews that I do want to bring up the fact that you do need negative reviews to make the positive reviews believable. And there was a study by Stanford called the blemish effect, and saying that if you have all 5s, it simply isn't credible to consumers, and they will literally not consider a provider with all 5s. And so you want some distribution of 3s, 2s, and 1s. They're really quite small. And I had someone this last weekend describe their buying process. And let me just share with you also that negative reviews, most often we took about 20,000 reviews, only 4% of which were neutral, negative, or highly negative. And then we went into the words in those neutral, negative, or highly negative reviews and found that the word most often used was time or waiting or being rushed. So if you want to avoid negative reviews, deal with issues related to service and time in particular, and that will help you. And then here's the man who described his shopping process to me, said that he goes and reads 3 reviews, 3 positive reviews, then he goes and reads 1 negative review, which calibrates the positive reviews, and that's when he decides to buy. And this is our favorite negative review, which is someone who wanted to look like a stripper. And reading this, my feeling would be this is an honorable doctor, and not this is a negative. Says something negative, much more negative about the patient than about the doctor. And so you don't really have to be, all bad reviews are not necessarily bad reviews to a potential consumer. Let's see if I can get this to move forward here. So now I'm going to turn this over to Eva to talk to you about the next SEO and online components of this portion.
Okay, thank you, Marie. I just want to start with the basics of reviews, and most of you probably already know this, and I know you all Google yourselves probably every day, but if you don't, it's a good idea to log out of your Google account, look at what happens when you Google your name or Google your practice name or the people who work in your practice and see what's out there. And you want to be sure that you're monitoring your name with the Google Alert, which is completely free, and it just sends you an email whenever your name appears on the internet. Responding to negative reviews is becoming the best practice, and you want to respond whenever possible. And if you're looking for examples of how to respond, TripAdvisor is an excellent place to get ideas about how to write back to people well, because on TripAdvisor, all the hotel managers are responding almost every day to every review they get, even the positive ones, which might be a little much, but if you need inspiration, that's a great place to look. And then to remember to use your reviews and everything that your patients create on your behalf as part of your marketing and sales strategy. Before we go into my secret weapons that I have for you, I want to share a little bit about my SEO philosophy with you, because there are so many different ideas about what SEO is out there and so many different ways of doing things. There's always a lot of different ways to accomplish the same goal. But I'm coming from the perspective that every internet marketing activity you take on has to be looked at through the same lens, which is that the primary goal is to increase conversions. And you should not rely on any single one tactic, but rather a variety of high quality sources of traffic and marketing, so that if one of those tactics stops working or becomes irrelevant, the whole house doesn't fall down. Most importantly, your main measure of success should never be the total number of visitors to your website or how many keywords you have number one rankings for, but only by conversions. Because if you're number one for a whole bunch of things, but those things aren't the things patients actually care about, then you're investing a lot of time and energy and money towards tactics that don't have a good return. So I want to show you some things that have a great return that often don't even cost anything. Okay, so consider this graphic, and I realize it's busy, but every kind of content on the internet is represented here on this matrix. And some of them don't apply to aesthetic websites, so I circled the ones that I think apply to us. It's so helpful because it explains the purpose of each kind of content and what it's designed to get someone to do. And so where we live right now with ratings and reviews is really over in this side of persuade and convert. But we have to have all these different kinds of content to serve all of our different users. So if this is a 30,000 foot view of internet content all in one nice little wrapped up package, then here are the 3 micro level types of content that you have to have on your site for it to convert a lot of leads. And so I don't think these will be surprises to any of you, but what I want to point out here is that if you have these as standalone sections on your website, you're doing great. You have before and after photos, reviews, thank you notes from patients, testimonials, and cost information. You're halfway there. But you also need to have each of these 3 types of content within your procedure pages, so that if you're reading about breast dog, you see these 3 pieces of information related to that procedure too. And so every procedure page becomes a rich and very helpful experience for a user to take the next step of contacting you. Think about your photo gallery, and this happened to me. I had this huge disconnect between what I was used to seeing online on all different kinds of websites and the number of cases that practices actually do are so far apart. So there's people out there who've done thousands and thousands of breast augmentation cases and might only have 50 cases online. And so I'm not suggesting that you go put 1,000 cases up, but you probably, if you do that many, you shouldn't be able to easily count how many cases you have on your website. So consider that the size of your gallery also suggests to people your expertise level in a procedure. You also want to include a great description of each case. How old was she? What did she want to accomplish? What was her height and weight? These things all help people visualize what you're going to be able to do for them. And they tell a story, and it's great for SEO too. If you write descriptions with every case, it keeps people in your gallery longer, which keeps them on your site longer, which increases your conversion rate. And that's the whole point. So the other thing I want to point out is you want to think about which cases appear in the front of your photo gallery. And I often see the scariest, most graphic images at the beginning, and that's really not a great experience for people. So look at the order your cases appear in and think about what kind of experience someone's going to have if they've never looked at your photos before. And then lastly, it's becoming the best practice to keep the really graphic nude images off of the homepage and off of most of the website and really sequester them to the gallery. You don't want your website to get flagged as an adult site or end up in a content filter that prevents people from seeing it, especially if they're at work or somewhere where other people can see what's on their screen. And we certainly don't want to offend anybody. So you should consider making it a choice for people to enter the part of your website where there's graphic images to look at. Number 2, most highly converting content, which we've touched on a lot already, is reviews. The best reviews are the most recent and the ones that appear authentic. And you also want to just maximize as much of this content that your patients give you as possible. Take pictures of the thank you notes. Don't just retype them into your website, but create collages. And these are great for Pinterest. And then lots of people do real patient stories and get a professional photographer to take photos and then tell the story of the patient. If you have patients that are gracious enough to do that for you, it's great for marketing. Videos, if you put video testimonials up, make sure you call them reviews and put them in YouTube as reviews, because then guess what? When people go to Google and search for reviews, they might actually see your video, and then you're pushing something else off the first page of Google that you may not want to be there. And then number 3 superpower content type is cost information. Not only is there a ton of search volume for cost of a procedure, price of this procedure in this city, it's critically important to people's decision-making process. And when they're educated enough about price before their consult, their likelihood to schedule when they do arrive at that consult goes up 16%, and that's a great advantage. And then including procedure or price information on each procedure also helps with SEO and helps those pages rank when people search for price info. Specials are controversial, but it can be done well. It doesn't have to be tacky. And there's no denying that even if you think it's not a great idea, consumers really like to see specials, and they actually search for specials. So it presents a great competitive advantage when you have content about that you can feature on your site. Okay, so here's where the real cool stuff is, and this is what I love about doing this work, is that I get to figure out consumer behavior in in the internet, where it's often a huge mystery to everybody what they're actually doing. So I did a study a few years ago, and the data from that study is actually more valuable now because Google isn't letting us track keywords the way that it used to. So about 90% of the traffic we get, we don't see keyword data for in our Google Analytics anymore. So if we have data from the past, it's even more valuable. And what we know is that when people are in the position of being ready to schedule a consult or buy, these are the words they use the most often. They use your name or your business name. They use plastic surgeon or plastic surgery, usually surgeon. They use the words best or top, and they search for reviews. And contrary to popular belief, they rarely ever look for procedure plus city name and then convert. So they use those kinds of terms more often when they're researching and trying to understand what this procedure is all about. And it's actually not a term that people use when they're ready to make an appointment. So in the grand scheme of things, you want to care about the priorities for your own SEO where people actually take action, because you can't be number one for everything. If we could, it would be a lot easier. But what I did was looked at a Seattle plastic surgeon's website who showed up for everything. He was highly visible for all kinds of searches, both procedure and plastic surgeon, plastic surgery. And in 2011, 849 people filled out a form on his website. More than half of them filled it out on a procedure page or in the photo gallery, and less than half on the long form on his contact page. So the point of that is you want to have a contact form on every page of your website. And then what I found was, of that group of 849 leads, only 4% of them had searched for some combination of a breast keyword term. But 26% of them had looked for plastic surgeon or plastic surgery. And then where it gets really interesting is that 107 more people converted because they had searched for the best plastic surgeon or the best whatever kind of surgeon they were looking for. Now, it seems obvious that they would search for a breast surgeon or a plastic surgeon, but a lot of people don't understand that this is one tiny piece of content that we wrote that generated 107 more leads for this practice that represented 13% of their overall traffic. And so I was curious, and I wanted to see, since 2011, how often people used reviews on this same practice to convert. And he actually had 79 leads in 2013 where the person had used the word reviews, and only 4 in 2011. So that's a huge jump. All we did was put a little feature on the sidebar that said, Dr. So-and-so was named as one of Seattle's best plastic surgeons in this such and such magazine. And that content all by itself generated 107 more leads for this practice. So even if the magazine was worth nothing and they never got a single phone call from the print version, we sure made good use of it online. Finally, I want to just share with you the 7 biggest mistakes I see people making still after all this time. And then we'll go back to Marie and talk about converting in the office. But the biggest mistake I still see day in and day out is that people are not tracking their conversions in Google Analytics. And basically what that tells you is that how many people filled out a form on this page or that page, or did they fill it out in the gallery, or did they fill it out on the contact page? Because you need to know where they're coming from and what parts of your website inspire them to go over the edge and actually reach out to you. Otherwise, you're just blind and in the dark. And then the other mistakes I see are that either people don't have access to their reports, or they don't get enough reports to know what's happening on the web, because we have to keep ourselves educated about what's happening just on the most basic level to protect your investment in this SEO stuff, because it's very expensive. Another mistake I see is that either nobody is creating content, or the office is required to create all the content, which is also hard because that's not supposed to be your job in the office. So it should be a collaboration is all I'm saying there. And then not having enough photos, or having poor quality or scary graphic before and after photos. I used to call it the granny test. You want someone who's never seen your website before to go look at the photos and react to you in front of you so you can see. Not sharing price information or price ranges, and then not tracking rankings. And what I mean by this is, don't just sit there Googling stuff, because the variation in the way people search is thousands and thousands of different terms and ideas and thoughts. And so if you're just Googling the same 3 or 4 things all the time, you're missing 99.9% of the stuff that people actually look for. And then not having a contact form on every page. In one study I did, adding a contact form increased the conversions by 30%, and it was overnight. So having a form on every page is an instant way to get a lot more leads. So I'm going to hand this back to Marie now. And if you have any questions, please email me or put it in the question box, and I'll do my best to get to all of them today.
Okay, now let's get that web lead, and let's see what we can do with it. I think increasing conversions, what I love about the web analytics now is that we can actually measure conversions, and I've been measuring conversions within the office for the last 20 years, as most of you know. So our ultimate goal in consult conversions is to be as effective as possible. And I hear so many, after all these years, I've heard so many comments, I need more leads, I need more leads. And my answer really is no, actually, you don't need more leads. What you need to do is effectively close the leads that are coming to you. And I still believe that to be true for most practices. So we want to be a funnel and not a sieve. And so let's look at some of the common mistakes that we make, and we're going to use our RPR data to do that. My guiding principle through all these years is that all work is teamwork. Anything worth doing is worth measuring, and we need to be our own toughest competitor. Otherwise, the marketplace will teach us, and as my husband used to say, our patients will teach us. They will, with their feet by going elsewhere. So when we look at the consult, it is a series of interactions, and the important thing here is when you say all work is teamwork, this does not occur. The consult is not the one moment with the doctor where this moment of the examination and recommendations. It was things that happened before. It's things that are going to happen later. And as the data that I'm going to show you today, it's things that happen from that initial contact, and it is things that are going to happen after the consult also that are going to determine what that ultimate conversion rate is going to be. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And one of the important things also is to learn from not only your own patient's data, but from the benchmarking that we have available to you, and what we can learn from not being so myopic about, well, if we do this, it must be right, or that's our patients or these particular kind of patients, and there's no way to convert them any better. And as long as you have that narrow view that permits you to be satisfied with what you're doing, you're not going to be your own toughest competitor. So when you look at the ratings that people give you, a patient satisfaction rating, a 1 or a 2, dissatisfied or highly dissatisfied, a 3, neutral, a 4, only satisfied, or a 5, highly satisfied. What's really important to understand is the behaviors associated with those ratings. So the 1 or the 2 are leaving. They are not staying to schedule. They may go write a negative review. We have negative 1s and 2s on consult reviews in real patient ratings. I have them in my own practice on Yelp. They're not happy campers, and they are willing to say so. Those in the zone of indifference, it was fascinating to me when I began to learn about patient satisfaction that those patients who are satisfied are actually as indifferent as those people who are neutral. And so that's a big challenge for us. And it is only those patients who describe themselves as highly satisfied who are going to buy from us at the greatest rate. They are going to retain and refer to us at the greatest rate, and they are the most valuable consumers. And what we try to understand is what makes them happy, and is there something that we can learn from them versus those who are only satisfied? Because when you look at the pattern, here's the 4% that are, this 2% are leaving, there's 2% indifferent. But this 19%, 1 patient out of 5, and this is data across hundreds of practices, they're basically leaving. They're not staying to buy, or some smaller percent are staying to buy. And if we could have made them highly satisfied, we could double their likelihood to schedule. And so if you look at 20% of your practice and double your likelihood to schedule, you look here at picking up 5 to 10% increase in scheduling rate. And depending on what your revenue is now per your scheduling rate, this could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, or for a larger practice, $1 million annually, by understanding what are the changes that we can make to move these 4s to 5s. And so this 545 is called understanding what makes people highly satisfied, identifying that percent of your consumers who are only satisfied, and then making changes in your service systems so that you move those 4s to 5s and gain the business advantages of having done so. So we decided we had an opportunity to have the statistics department at UCLA look at our 2.5 million questions answered, and we asked them specifically, I'm going to report to you on their consult findings. And there's some things here that you can learn and changes that you can make to improve conversion rates. And the first finding was related to pre-consult materials, which is those who did not receive any forms or materials, received registration forms only, or a link to the website, were 27% less likely to schedule than those who received printed brochures plus reviews. So this is the folder that I send the materials, the printed materials from our practice, and we then also send a link to reviews. And so I'm able to take advantage of this finding. And I suggest to you that if you are not sending a brochure and printed materials to new patients and you want to see an increase in scheduling rates, this is a way to do so. And an immediate way to do so would be to send a link. This will help you, but not as much as doing both, but to send a link to the review page on your website. If you're a group, this is what our group page looks like, and this is what we use when we have an email for what we call an any doctor request, where they still don't know which doctor they're asking to see. And then this is what we send to confirm an appointment, and this is after having sent obviously the printed materials with the appointment confirmation, but then in that the text confirmation, we send the link to the reviews. And again, this is just because we know reviews persuade and ratings convert, we just want to make sure that the patients have seen those reviews. And this comes up very well in their smartphone as an easy way to just scroll through and get those last impressions of strangers about the physician. And because we're a group, it's harder for us to send a link about that doctor and the specific procedure, but a solo physician can do both. Those who knew someone who had the procedure were 22% more likely to schedule the procedure. So how do we take advantage of this? Make sure that this is on your telephone intake record, that you know this. Send a link to the reviews of the procedure. And if you have, again, if you're solo, you can send a link to your specific reviews. If you have staff who've had the procedure, make sure that they're able to talk to that staff member at consult or even in advance of consult. And then, the old-fashioned way, go back to that list of patients who have had a procedure and be sure that the patient can talk to someone who's had a procedure. I mean, a 25% increase in likelihood to schedule is such a significant increase that it warrants attention. And this is a link. This is a link we would send to someone who is, considering breast augmentation and wants to see reviews from breast augmentation patients. Photos. patients who were highly satisfied with photos were 65% more likely to schedule. So it's summertime, you're a little less busy, though you're unhappy with how you're displaying your photos. This is the time to work on that project. And Eva gave you some ideas. We still have patients reporting in the surgical study that they did not see photos, or that they were dissatisfied or highly dissatisfied with the photos that they were shown. And but much lower scheduling rates associated with these patients. So this is looking at, from the RPR data of about 7,000 patients, scheduling rate 13% if they're highly dissatisfied with the patient's pictures they saw, scheduling rate if they're highly satisfied with the photos, 68%. So that's a very high spread. And if your patients are satisfied with photos and you want to increase scheduling rates 39%, improve your photo presentation and you'll pick up a 39% increase in scheduling just by improving how you present your photos. Fee estimates. Those who had no fee estimates. And again, we received a outreach the other day from someone who had been making multiple calls to a practice trying to get a fee estimate, wanted to schedule surgery, and could not get the practice to give them a fee estimate. And you just think, I know how hard that practice wants to be scheduling surgery. And for us as Real Patient Ratings to receive this outreach, you just go, oh my God, it's just, is this America in 2014? And those who felt the fee estimate was much less than expected had 4 times greater likelihood to schedule. So this is another metric that says to you, prepare the patient for the fee estimate. And if you're going to quote the wrong number, it's far better to quote too high, quote that range too high, not enough to scare them away, but if you end up quoting them less or the lower end of that range, you are going to have a scheduling benefit. Post-consult. Those who received a telephone call following their appointment were the most likely to schedule. And in the survey, we had asked the patients, how did you receive, what post-consult contact? Telephone, email, text, a combination, or no contact. And unfortunately, there's still patients who are reporting that they are not receiving any contact post-consult. But out of these methodologies, telephone contact is still the most effective form to increase scheduling. So this is a very old slide that I've been using for 20 years. It's scheduling is a contact sport. You just must continue until someone says no, stop. Keep contacting, gain their permission for the next contact. Okay, you're thinking now of August, then I'll be checking with you at the end of July. Does that sound good? And if they say yes, note that in your CRM system and make that next call clearly at the end of July. So, what have we learned? Satisfied consult isn't enough for conversion. They're about twice as likely to schedule if we can move them into that highly satisfied category versus satisfied. And some changes in basic and key processes can drive significant returns in conversions, and which then can become revenue. So now we're available for questions. Eva, do you have some questions?
Yes, I actually do have a few. Let's see. There's a few for me, so I will start with those. someone asked which reviews are the most influential, Real Selves, Google, Yelp, etc. And I think it would be very hard to say which one of those three is the most influential. But what's happening is that people, when they really want to share their experience about cosmetic surgery, don't want to give up their anonymity. So what you want to look for is, where are the people going to feel the safest as they go to write a review, and that's where you will get the most reviews. As for being influential, I think it's really the content, the how recent it is, and how authentic it is that makes it influential. So between those three, Real Self, Google, and Yelp, there's probably not going to be a winner, although people are very frustrated with Google and Google Plus, and they have the hardest time writing reviews there because so what happens is, if someone has searched for reviews of breast augmentation and their friend has written a review of a breast augmentation, that will actually show up in the other person's Google search. So it's almost like Google is demanding us to give up our anonymity, and that's very hard for people. And I've seen Yelp and Real Self be very powerful for practice websites, and you couldn't make me choose. I would always say do both and have a strategy for both. Um, so someone else asked me, how can we track rankings and not just Google stuff? And that's a very good question. My favorite tracker is Moz.com, Moz.com. And that's what I use to track rankings. But there's tons of programs out there that will just run it for you every week and tell you, here's where you are this week. And it's actually a really good idea to monitor that on your own and not just depend on an SEO company to do it for you, because everybody's going to look at it a different way. Marie, how do you determine fair quoting for procedures? Our concern is that when researching online, we're not obtaining comprehensive financial quotes, including all fees.
Well, I don't understand what they mean by the term fair quoting, but I think that I've been publishing my fees online for more than 10 years, and I didn't know the SEO of it. I didn't know how wise I was. I was doing it simply because I felt that consumers make buying decisions by price, and I wanted them to know our prices, and that I felt that our name was sort of off-putting, La Jolla Cosmetic Surgery Center, and that they would feel they couldn't afford us. And I also didn't want someone to call us and think that Tummy Tuck was $1,500 and covered by insurance. So I quote a range. I quote everything, including anesthesia, the OR, and say on tummy tucks, I quote from the smallest tummy tuck to the extended tummy tuck, so that wider range. And I honestly believe that people appreciate it, and I think that we do a lot of breast dogs in our practice, so I don't think you can do a lot of breast dogs without having payment plan options, and so we cover those as well in that whole section of the site. And the specials part of it, we do have specials. I didn't know the SEO part of it. I just understand that consumers are driven by them, and I don't think it denigrates us to understand consumer behavior. I just try to benefit from how they think.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question is, our system doesn't send text messages. Do you know a good company that offers this? And I would love to hear from other people. If you, those of you out there, have a great company that does that, will you send it to me in the questions box or in the chat and let us know what else out there is good?
Yeah, and if you don't have that, then I would send it as an email. But I would just I would try to confirm the appointment with a link, is just with those reviews. I'd want those reviews to be sent, because one of the most wonderful comments I hear from patients since we began this process of sending the link to the reviews is they will say, I feel like I already know you. and to come to an emotionally charged encounter, which is what a consult is, to come to talk to strangers about something so personal, but to feel like they already know us, that to me is an important emotional advance for them to have made.
Excellent. Next question is, Marie, do you suggest bidding and creating landing pages for reviews on pay-per-click? And I actually hadn't thought of that until this question came in, but we absolutely recommend that if you're in a multi-doc practice, that every doctor has a page of reviews on your own website. And they can come from various different sources. They don't have to come from any one place, but the more pages you create that all have different content, the better you're going to do in Google for review searches. And then I think also if you were going to do AdWords and buy ads for reviews, that you could take up another space in that first page of Google with an ad and go straight to your reviews page. Once it's there organically, there's really no reason to keep doing an ad there. But whenever you're buying ads on your own name, they're incredibly inexpensive because nobody else is buying them. And then if someone else is buying them, because you own the name, Google's always going to put you first, even if they bid more than you. So there's lots of reasons to do that. It's good stuff. Last one, Marie, is how do you track your email to surgery conversion rate? What are the actual steps to do that?
Well, I'm using Inform and Enhance at the moment, and I put that in Inform and Enhance many years ago, and I'm just switching to Patient Now, and they are putting that functionality in a new version for me, so that I have what is called source of the plan, and it came as a call, an email, a contact form, and then I do my conversions based on that. So I have to work in our practice. We have to work twice as hard to convert a contact form to surgery as a phone call, but it's still where I am right now, or where I've been for the last couple of years, is half of our surgical volume starts as a phone call and half starts as a contact form. So it's a significant, if I didn't take contact forms seriously, we would be a significantly smaller practice.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I think that's all the questions that I have, but if anybody else if you think of anything later in the day, of course, just email us. We're here to help, and we'd love your feedback. And when you close the webinar, you'll get a little tiny survey, just a few questions, and if you wouldn't mind answering those for us, we would greatly appreciate it. So with that, have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.